right. Hey, what's going on? I hope you're having a great day. Steven here, along with my counterpart from WIT Digital for another episode of Home Service Success TV. And today we got Chris Crew with us, who is the president of Blue Collar Success Group. Chris, welcome to the show.
What's up, guys? How are y'all doing? Good to be here with you guys.
Awesome, man. So just a little bit of a background on Chris, if you don't know him. So Chris entered the electrical trades when he was 16. Quickly climbed the ranks there. Shortly after he entered, he took over a lot more of some of the operations. He started kind of finding this natural desire to help people and to serve, continued to move up the ranks, went into some sales stuff, had a $1.4 million sales year, which he did win an award from. Then in 2012, he took on brand manager of a national franchise electric company, which had over 90 locations, and ultimately ended up being, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically the head of like brand management, the head of training. You had a team of coaches, and you serve those 90 locations at the absolute highest level. Then, if that wasn't enough, in 2013, Chris went out and started his own company, built it with a partner, I believe, started with around 10 trucks, grew it to 60 trucks and 18 million in revenue in 4 years. And that is extremely impressive. So what we're going to talk about today with Chris is going to be really important, because it might not be super sexy, but just thinking about these statistics and what he has done and what he's proven he can do, I want to encourage you to listen to the things that we're talking about. So after growing that company, sold his shares in 2018, met our good friend Kenny Chapman, and they hit it off. And basically fast forward 2 years now, Chris has done such a great job at the Blue Collar Success Group that he is now the president of the operation and kicking ass over there. So Chris, how did I do?
Look, that was a walk down memory lane. That was about 25 years of my life, and all of a sudden I'm starting to not feel that great about myself. You can tell my history in a small amount of time. So
hey, I want to make sure that people see, because especially when we start talking about things today, which we're going to share a lot about, doing the unsexy, going back to the fundamentals. Because when I asked you, I said, what's the most important thing that you're seeing right now that people should focus on? And when you said, unfortunately, it's the unsexy stuff and going back to fundamentals, like, I wanted to make sure people knew what you've accomplished so that there's a lot of trust already built with the things that you're going to share today.
Sure. It makes total sense, Stephen. In fact, I think that from time to time, we as owners and operators can fall into the trap of the amateur that's like, oh yeah, I know that, we do that. And it goes back, Stephen, to one of the things I said to you earlier. And I beat this drum all the time. It doesn't matter what role you're in. If you're a service manager, you're sales manager, install manager, general manager, owner, CEO, absentee owner, doesn't matter. You 100% have to have things in place that allow you to inspect what you expect from those people. Without that, nothing is going to happen. You can hire great people and put them in their place and give them all the processes and all the cool stuff and all the softwares, but if those people aren't held accountable to certain standards, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. And like at WIT, I talk a lot in our leadership about, we create a lane for especially for our leaders, right? And our leaders and everybody else has this lane that they can play within. And it's this art of making the lane just wide enough so that they can be creative within it, but not so wide that before you know it, they're like, wait, what's my actual role here again? And then they get confused, and then it doesn't allow them to be successful.
Yeah, so true. It's funny you use that word lane. As an operator, one of the things that I would do from a manager's perspective is to, quote, give them that creativity. Is I explained where are the boundaries, where's the white line, where's the yellow line? And then I would say, here's the keys. It's a very fast machine. I encourage you to drive it as fast as you want, but do me a favor, don't crash it. Like, so it's like, that's that whole, if somebody, Steven, I know you got a fast car, right? It's like, if you gave me the keys to that car and like said, hey dude, drive it like you own it, I'm going to go enjoy that car. But if you said, hey, would you drive my car down the street? I'm probably going to be super careful with it because you didn't, quote, give me the boundaries and permission, right? So I think it's very valuable for us. I was just on the phone with an owner who is very pulled away in his personal life right now. And he said, I'm really struggling with promoting somebody to general manager. And I called his name and I said, have you set what the boundaries are of what your expectations are? You are a perfectionist. And so you've got to understand nobody's going to do it as good as you will, but create what that boundary is and what it looks like. What is the framework that they need to stay with inside so that you can be satisfied and stepping away? I think that's where a lot of times we miscommunicate, whether it's we're a service manager and, you know, we didn't clearly communicate with our new technicians. We go, I trained them. And the most common thing I hear, Stephen, is when they say things like, I've probably told them 1,000 times to do this. And I'm like, yeah, sure you have. You haven't really trained them. My new big saying is, if you're constantly dealing with problems, but you never have the solution, you might be the problem.
I love that. Davis, there's a quote for us right there. So awesome, man. Chris, what do you know, in all the coaching that you're doing right now, I mean, things are crazy, right? We got COVID, there's so many unknowns. So when you're talking to people about going back to the fundamentals and going back to the basics, what are some of the biggest ones that you're seeing that even these big companies, like we were talking about right before we started, you're seeing this in like, you know, 40, $50 million companies. These are not small companies. What are some of those things that you're seeing consistently come up that people are missing?
So software has given us insight to things we could have never seen before software. I go all the way back to my days of a Nextel and paper invoices. And I thought back then we were super cutting edge on technology. And I'm looking back and I'm like, that was less than 20 years ago, right? And back in the day, we did certain things and technology led us to believe that we should get away from those things, or when technology shifted, we didn't shift with it in some of our, quote, fundamentals. Like we talk about a thing called the old school invoice review. Now, this is very fresh to me because just yesterday we were talking with our mastermind group about this whole invoice review. And the challenge is, at what point do we look at too much stuff? So where's the balance of what we're looking for? And not having a paper invoice caused many businesses to get away from the old invoice review, where I would do invoice coaching. I review the invoice. What were the items with it we wrote up? What did our option sheet look like? What did the inspection form look like? Because all that was, it was the scorecard of the evidence of all the plays that got ran in a home. And I'm trying to piece it together and go, why were we not successful on this one? Or if we were successful, how do I duplicate that? So one of the things that I encourage owners and managers to do, if you're a service manager, you got to go back to that invoice review. The challenge is you don't have paper to review, but you have real-time data and information. In case a lot of software, Stephen, allow us to see something we've never seen before. And that is when the technician arrives or the salesperson arrives to when they created their first line item on the invoice, how much time was allowed there to create value and build relationships. Low performance, typically we find about 15 to 20 minutes of time between those two episodes. We've never been able to see that before. And the data's in front of us. I think sometimes today we get paralysis from analysis and we don't do anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, we see it from the marketing side, right? Because we have access to a lot of our clients' softwares, and we'll go in and we'll look, and they have like, you know, 400 tracking phone numbers that they put on every single thing they've ever done. And I just ask them like, well, when's the last time you actually reviewed and looked at all that data? They're like, oh, well, never. I'm like, cool, then don't track stuff. Don't waste your time on stuff that you're not going to actually be able to use.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's really interesting to just take a step back and remember how much has changed in a very short amount of time and how much data we have. And it's cool to talk about, but if we're not doing anything with it, it's worthless.
So for me, it's at the end of the day, Stephen, I don't care about anything. All I care about is results. And the reality is everybody's getting results already. The question is, are we getting the results we're looking for, right? And so that goes back to a lot of times it's this time dilemma. We don't have time to get everything done. And so one of the things that we're really big on is focus on the things that matter, right? And so telling me that you don't have time to do an invoice review on every call that was run for the previous day by 12 o'clock. So now when you get in front of your team, you know exactly what you need to train on. It gives you the answers right there. I go back to something as simple as call reviews. So like on the inbound call, are you grading 9 calls a week per agent? 3 booked, 3 non-booked, and 3 non-opportunities. And people are like, well, why? If we booked it, what's it matter? And I said, because just because you answered the phone, there's a certain amount of customers that are just going to book just because you answered. And so quit lying to yourself to believing that you're as good as you really are, and start digging in and going, even though we booked this, we didn't do anything the way that we normally were supposed to do it. And this goes back to inspecting what you expect. Like, I expect good quality results. 3 non-books so I can coach on where we went wrong. 3 non-opportunities so I can see how do we treat people when they call in and go, I was wondering where my invoice was. I was calling to speak to someone in accounting. And typically we find that gatekeepers are very rude. And what does that mean for vendors? Vendors are going, well, I don't even know if I want to work with this company. The gatekeeper was a jerk, or you know what I mean? And so it's like, you permeate everything in your business of what you're putting off. And it goes back to what you said, this law of attraction. I'll roll up my sleeves and get right involved in that conversation, because I believe in life, you get what you give. If you put off a lot of negative stuff, you're going to get a lot of negative stuff.
Yeah, dude, I couldn't agree more. So, all right, this is really good stuff. So we got invoice review. We got listening to calls, which from a marketing company, please listen to calls. We listen to every one of our clients' calls, everyone. And you should see the face on some of the people that listen to calls for us. They're like, well, no wonder this company's not doing well. So yeah, listening to calls. And I love that it's that 3-3-3 rule. That's really, really cool. What else? Somebody that's sitting there going, all right, I'm super busy. I don't have a whole lot of time, but what's 1 or 2 or 3 or however many else you want to list off?
I think it goes back to like creating structure too, for your sales and for your manager. One of the things that I've really been hammering on a lot, ladies, because everybody's always too busy. Like, we're all given 24 hours. How are we always all too busy to do the things that allow us to get better results? And so one of the things I've been talking about, like, service businesses never lived by a calendar. Like the white collar jobs live by a calendar, but blue collar never lives by a calendar. Quote, sorry about the Freudian slip there with the blue collar, but like blue collar jobs and managers don't necessarily always live by a calendar. We just live in the moment. And that's why we feel like we firefight all day long, because every day you've got to show up with your plan. So if I know that if I'm a service manager today, and today is truck wash schedule day, and it's not on my calendar that today's truck wash schedule, it won't happen. What if today was my day to do ride-alongs, and I came in and a tech called out sick and an angry customer's on the phone, and I was supposed to go ride with John today, but I ain't got time for John because John can't wait around me. And so once again, we get away from all the fundamentals that allowed us to be who we are today.
So what you guys, I'm going to guess on some of this stuff, but so like what you guys are coaching your clients to do is put a lot of that stuff in the calendar that seems basic, but yet is really important before it becomes urgent and important.
Yep. Otherwise, you get to the end of the day and you've still got that stack of stuff, quote, stack of stuff that needs to get done. Here's another thing too. It just come to me. In many cases, service managers, call center managers, and sales managers and install managers, this is a challenge with the industry. They have been promoted because they were great at the position that they're managing. And then all of a sudden they assume this new responsibility with nobody teaching them how to do that. I know that's not sexy and it's not fun, but like how we're setting people up for failure. It's no different than putting a tech in a truck and not teaching them how to be a tech. We put a manager in a role and don't teach them how to be a manager. And so one of the things that I'm really big on is build your company around you, but don't build your company around you. What I mean by that is you've got to build the people around you, build them, not just create people around you. You can create, I can go hire and promote a bunch of people tomorrow. It won't make my business any better just because I now have a dedicated service manager, call center manager, install manager, and sales manager. I may end up being busier than I've ever been now because there is no structure, nor are there any expectations put in place for those people. And there's a lot of great run businesses that I have the pleasure of working with that got their stuff together, but even yet they're always looking for that 10%, because 10% can generate another 50% results.
Yeah.
That's why people hire coaches, right? Because they're saying, how do I get better?
Yeah, we want coaches. I mean, I've had coaches for the last 15 years, and I generally have one or two at any given time, because that perspective is so important. The perspective and the knowledge that somebody like you can bring by working with, multiple other businesses like mine, and bring in, okay, hey, this is working really well over here. This is working really well over here. Like, that perspective is so invaluable.
It would be no different, if we were playing in a band. If nobody's out listening to the entire performance, or if nobody's in tune to the actual lead guitar, they don't realize as a group while you're playing in the band that something's off. Like, it just sounds great from where you're at. You go back and listen, go, sounds good. But when someone gets super laser focused in their lane, right, the ability to generate better results, if you have outside perspective, it's the same concept of, standing in the forest and you can't see the trees because you're in the thick of it, right? You're in the thick of it. You need that outside perspective to catch your blind spots for you, to go, hey, you thought about this? Like, something as simple as, I don't know, let's just say 60% of your existing customers you're paying for on pay-per-click. Why? Why would you do that? So that tells me you don't own the home.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do I own the home? All right, cool. Let's talk about what that looks like. And it typically almost always doesn't come down to new ideas. It just comes down to going back to the things that made us who we are, great as an industry. I mean, how about this one? This one's going to blow you away. You ready? I'm curious, because somebody's going to be like, oh, that one hit a little hard. When's the last time you printed door hangers and held your team accountable to put door hangers out?
Ooh. It doesn't happen anymore, because now what happens is, a lot of times the marketing agency gets a call and is like, hey, we're slow. Like, what's wrong? Well, I don't know. I mean, we're not the first person that you should be going to. We're here as a partner, but ultimately there's a lot of other things that are probably happening in between that, what's the experience right now, and contacting the marketing agency.
Yeah, that being said, typically what I see is people start cutting, slashing. Yeah. Where can we cut and where can we slash? And I understand you got to trim the fat, when times get slow. I get that. Like, oh, okay, maybe we don't need that. But man, best advice I could tell people all the time is you can't cut your way to success. You just can't.
Yeah.
Like, success doesn't come by cutting. Success comes by analyzing what needs to be done. And sometimes it might include cutting, but it's not always the solution. And spending money is not the solution either.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Especially, pay-per-click, right? You can get caught in this, we call it pay-per-click crack, where all of a sudden now you got a $5 million a year company spending $80,000 a month on pay-per-click, and they're scared to death to turn it off because it's like the only lead generator they have.
Yeah. And you got to be diverse when it comes to the marketing too. It's funny, just before we hopped on, I had somebody that had asked, how do you know it's time to expand? And I said, if you're at about 50% of your max spend of something, you should shift to something else so that you can continue to grow that and not be so volatile in other areas, right? And I said this, Stephen, I said this back, based on today's date, I said this probably 8 months ago, and I said pay-per-click is quickly going to become the yellow pages of our industry. And look, now all of a sudden, here we are.
Freaking love you.
Yeah. But to that tune, though, so let me caveat that. People believe the yellow pages are dead, and the answer is no, they're not. They just globally are dead. In certain markets like where I'm at, in fact, you're going to laugh, it was my number 3 lead source, and I can tell you with confidence that it was generating good ROI because I was looking at the reports, because it wasn't like, oh, we get a lot of calls from it. They were legit, closable, high ticket, good revenue stuff, because I'm looking at the report and going, if we cut yellow pages, we would be in trouble. But I wouldn't go give that advice to somebody that's sitting in Los Angeles that they should be in the yellow pages. I wouldn't tell them that. And the same is true about pay-per-click when people are like, oh, it's dead all the way. And I'm like, is still alive in some markets. So don't quote give bad advice based on what it works in your market.
Yep. Yeah. Look at the data, right? Be
Good.
intelligent, cut where it's not working and put more into where it is working. And yeah, pay-per-click. I mean, we could have a whole discussion specifically on the topic of pay-per-click, because I agree with you, and it's changed a lot. And people forget that it was like 6 or 7 years ago when pay-per-click worked to where you could just throw more money at it and you got more calls. That everybody thinks that was yesterday, and they're like, well, why is my pay-per-click twice as much now? That was a long time ago, not last year. So yeah, we'll talk about pay-per-click later. So I think, Davis, unless you have maybe like one last topic that you want to make sure we cover in this one, because we can always have Chris back on to follow or to have follow-up topics and conversations. But at the same time, we want to keep it short and concise too. If you don't have one, I have one.
I got one for you, Chris. And I think this flows actually nicely from the topic of being too laser focused on one thing at any given time. And it's also a very common question we get from our clients is, you know, if we're doing marketing for them, or if they're just investing in their marketing at any given time and it really starts to work for them, and 3 months out, they're actually generating way more leads than they can answer to. And so it's actually putting a sour taste in their potential customer's mouth, because they're either not returning their phone calls in a timely manner, or they're having to book, 3 to 6 weeks out. So how can business owners and managers actually balance marketing and recruiting and growth overall? And how can, like, what have you seen in terms of, common challenges and pitfalls in that area?
So great question, Davis. I believe there's two types of growth: planned growth and unexpected growth. And when you have planned growth, it's not really that hard to manage. You know exactly how many people you have, you know exactly how many calls a day you want them running, you know exactly how many days in a month there are. And then you just go to the board and go, cool, how many calls do I need? I need X. All right, cool. Now I back that in and go, all right, what was our close rate in the field? What was our close rate on the phone? And I start reverse engineering the plan so I can say, great, here's how many times I need to make the phone ring. All right. So then when I look at my overall average of calls per call, and then I go look and go, all right, cool. Now where are some areas I need to spend? So if I'm moving into hey, we need more calls. And here's the challenge. We sometimes get knee-jerk reaction because we have a slow day, where we have a slow 3 days. Something happens and it's out of the norm. And I mean, we're coming into an election year. Throw all the stats out the window is what I tell you. Throw all the stats out the window at election year and stay super focused on what got you here. If you have planned growth, it's really not that challenge. You should know exactly when you're going to need to hire new people based on the amount of money that you budgeted to spend. And the challenge is we go, oh, we're afraid to spend it, make the phone ring. We'll get super committed to recruiting. And you can't find out next week that we're going to be busy and go recruit somebody. That's not today's market.
Right.
10 years ago, you could have placed an ad and had a line out the door and you were 100% in control. You're not in control of that anymore. Supply and demand is a little different. So what I say is recruiting is not really recruiting anymore. It's marketing. You're just marketing for team members, not customers. So if your phone's not ringing with applicants, what should you do? You got to start finding them. You got to go out and be super aggressive. So planned growth, not really much there. I mean, it's like, it's pretty easy to balance, right? Yeah. Unplanned growth is, holy crap, all of a sudden our marketing took off and we didn't even know we were going to need people. I would tell anybody, the very first thing I would do is sit down and get the fundamentals in place. Let's figure out these metrics that I just talked about: number of texts, calls per day, average ticket, close rate on the phone. How many people do you have on the phone? How long does it take to book a call? Because this business is actually quite simple. Why do you think private equity firms are so interested in our industry? Because, quote, it's been blue collar and we've not been running it by the numbers. That's why. Private equity runs everything by numbers. So they go back and look at numbers and go, holy smokes, we could turn this business into a, 4 times the size it is if we started looking at the numbers and focused on that. So I know that kind of sounds like a little bit of a cop-out, but it is what it is, man.
Well, no, and that's actually very much kind of what we've learned to do on our end is, when we are generating too many leads, well, first and foremost, like your point about creating predictable growth and like having that conversation up front is something that we've learned to do. And then, yeah, if we are generating too many leads, we'll actually reallocate some of that marketing spend into a recruitment campaign. So it's like, okay, now we need to go get some, some techs in your area. And gee, maybe it's a smaller market and there's only a few, high value techs out there. So we're able to actually target, some of those specific jobs that you might be seeking to grow your business. And I think that's something that's, unique actually to a marketing agency. A lot of time agencies are purely focused on generating leads, but to your point, having that conversation about like, what are your aspirations? Where do you want to be in 3 years? And then, okay, it doesn't just involve marketing. It actually involves your operations, your management, your recruitment, the whole thing.
In fact, what you just said, so very valuable. Planning like your plan. So I always gave myself 2 months of headway. If I go, I need a tech in December, I start recruiting them in October. I start the process of recruiting in October so that I give myself 3 to 4 weeks of hardcore rolled up my sleeve, go find them, because you're going to interview people or people are going to no show. And then I got to be able to get them trained. So needing them in December means I got to actually backtrack and go, how long is it going to take me to recruit? How long is it going to take me to train, so that when December hits, they're ready to start running calls?
Yeah, totally.
It's just a plan. That's all it is. It just put a plan together and work your plan.
Yep.
So simple, right? So simple.
Yet so complex. We overcomplicate it, right? Just get back to those basics and fundamental stuff.
That's awesome, man. Well, Chris, dude, this has been fantastic. I'm sure we'll have you back on to talk about all of the other things that we haven't even touched on today. Tell people if they want to find out more about you, Blue Collar, if they want to connect, what's the best way? Where do you want people to go?
I think really, you can go to our website, you can find information. I will say there's a lot of great coaching organizations out there. I'm friends with several of them. I have been involved with them. We have clients that are involved in other organizations. At the end of the day, it's rarely about the stuff. It's about the relationship. I highly recommend cut through the clutter. Don't go to the website and try to look for more information. I'm not giving you one of those pitches. Literally call the number on the website and go, I just want to talk to somebody. And you're going to get live one of our team members that is going to be able to first understand, to your point, what do you want? And if we can't fulfill it and nothing that we do makes sense for you, we'll tell you who to go to. We'll tell you, based on what you're looking for, this is what you need. Just to throw it out there though, not only do we do training, and that's typically where a lot of organizations saying that had us training. So we are doing virtual. Everything that we do today, we have set up to do virtual today. We'll also do those in person when we can do that safely. We also coach, and we do that one-on-one or in groups, meaning some of our coaching we do as a group, right? And we leverage the people in that group and bounce the information off of them. But we also do one-on-one where we take deeper dives, where we're doing an income statement review. By the way, best advice I can give you, if you have a coach today that is a quote business coach and they've never asked to see your financials, find a new coach. Sorry.
All right.
I hope that wasn't too straightforward.
Not at all, man. Look, we're here to give real information. So there's no need to sugarcoat anything. Awesome, man. Well, Chris, dude, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks for spending the time with us. Thanks for helping out the audience with some of this stuff. And, some of my key takeaways that we got today from Chris with Blue Collar Success Group are stick to the fundamentals, go back to some of the basics. Even though this stuff isn't sexy, this is what makes a business run. So stop looking for that bright, shiny object or that new thing. Chances are there's a lot of opportunity within the business and the basics. So go back in and look at those. Some of the things he mentioned are invoice review. Software and technology gives us a huge insight into this stuff that we didn't have just even 20 years ago. So go back and make sure that you guys are working on the invoice review. 9 calls per agent per week. That was huge for me. And I think that I know with our clients, we see they'll do it for a couple months. And then once they get it really well and things are working good, they stop doing it sometimes. So get on that habit of 9 calls per agent per week in grading. Live by your calendar. If it's important, put it in the calendar. live by it. That's how that important stuff gets done before it becomes urgent and before it becomes a fire. That's how you keep that consistency going. Make sure that you are planning for planned growth versus unplanned growth, because it's a lot more uncomfortable. There's a lot more things that can go wrong when you get into unplanned growth. So take some time, probably put it on your calendar, right? Put it on your calendar. If you know you're going to need somebody in a couple months, start working on that now. But plan for planned growth. And then the last thing that Chris mentioned in the end is about coaching. Coaching is not necessarily just about the content there. It's about that relationship. So when you're looking for a coach, call the company, talk to them, see how it feels, make sure that they're asking questions that resonate with you, and see what that relationship is like. So that's what I got for you today. Davis and Steven from WIT with another episode of Home Service Success TV. I hope you have an absolutely amazing rest of your day.